Big thanks go out to Tywa for supporting today's video via Patreon. Ulamog the Defiler versus Azlask, Nevinyrral and Sliver Overlor. And that's a pretty strong opening hand for us. We're going to empty our hand reasonably quickly, but Kozilek should refill it. The World Tree comes down for the 5-colour Eldrazi player. And we draw into Hedron Archive, so even more mana. Should be able to get that down next turn thanks to the Mishra's Workshop, which taps for 3 colourless mana. Can only use that on artifacts though. So get down a turn 1 Mind Stone. And we might as well get down the doubling cube as well to save on mana later on. I think we're just going to have to try and go really fast this game. Azlask playing out a blister pod, so when that dies it makes a spawn token. Alright, and luckily drawing into more mana, Grim Monolith will go well with the doubling cube. So we'll play a Scryland. And that is a basic on top, which... yeah, I think we're doing alright on mana. Let's try and get into some means of removal or card draw or just anything else really. Play the Hedron Archive with the 3 mana from the Mishra's Workshop again. And then we can just hold up the 3 mana for the Cicada. And that way we'll be able to play our colourless spells at instant speed. Quick Sliver for the tribal deck means he can play at flash speed as well. Farseek for Azlask. And then hitting us for 1. The Esper player holding up double blue unfortunately, but we'll just have to try and make him use whatever counter magic he has in hand. So I'll play the Cicada at the end of the turn. Okay, and that lands, so we're able to just do everything at instant speed at this point. And as I say that, we draw into a sorcery, which is a means of removal for us. So I'll play out the Urza's Workshop. Don't have any other Urza lands at the moment, but we might draw into them and have that tap for double mana. Again, no need to play on our turn now. Cryptolith going to generate more mana with the Slivers for the 5-colour deck. And nothing countered from Nevinyrral, just playing out another land and passing through his turn again. And the first commander to go on the stack is Azlask, the Swelling Scourge. Look forward to playing that one myself. I do like the idea of buffing up a load of Scions and Spawns. And then another Eldrazi, Idol of the False Gods. Okay, so at the end step we're safe, I assume, to go for the Grim Monolith. And then we can completely tap out. That gives us 8 mana floating. We put 3 of it into the doubling cube, means we go down to 5. And that doubles us up to 11 mana. So now I think we go for Ulamog here, and if it gets countered, that should free the way for us to go Kozilek next turn and refill our hand. Do get a buff on the Cicada, but it's not of relevance here during an end step. And there's every chance that our opponent scoops here, but I'm going to exile half of Azlask's library because he'll probably have Eldrazi in there, and that means more counters on Ulamog. And yeah, does scoop to the Ulamog. And that causes a chain reaction. The Sliver deck decides to scoop as well, so probably not going to show you this one because I imagine Nevinyrral won't last too much longer. Alright, drawing into Unstable Obelisk, which will tap for a mana, and it's permanent removal. Now, because the other Eldrazi player decided to scoop, we didn't see anything in exile, and therefore Ulamog doesn't have any plus counters, and therefore doesn't have Annihilator. But we could swing in anyway here. So the Ulamog trigger still goes on the stack, but it cares about plus counters, of which we have none. Alright, that's interesting. A Void Rend going on to the commander. So this will be countered with the ward cost, because they don't want to sacrifice their lands. Except the fact that Void Rend can't be countered, so it's probably the perfect piece of spot removal at this point. So not sacrificing any lands to the ward, and does manage to blow up Ulamog. So during the attack phase I'll get down the Unstable Obelisk at instant speed, and we can buff up the Cicada, and then we'll just pass through the turn. Alright, a mana crypt for our opponent, seems to be playing it out. And there's a Demonic Tutor as well, no doubt going for a board wipe, could be a Farewell or something like that. So before we see that board wipe, I think we're better going for the Kozilek to refill our hand. So in preparation for that, we'll untap the Grim Monolith. Okay, and there's a Roaming Throne as well, which wouldn't be the worst thing to get into play. Not sure if I want to hold up the Unstable Obelisk for that Mana Crypt. I'll just leave it on tap for now, tap out into the doubling cube. That gives us 13 mana. We've got 3 artifact mana as well, so use most of that to get out the roaming throne. And that will buff up the cicada. And then we'll go for a main phase Kozilek as well, just to buff up the cicada and start getting more damage through. The fact that our opponent is playing this out means that he's probably got a farewell or some kind of answer. So Kozilek draws us up to 6. That's not... yeah, those aren't the best cards, but it clears them off the top at least. What can we do here? Yeah, if I'd tapped down the obelisk into the doubling cube, we'd have an additional mana here. And then I would have been able to use my removal to blow up the mana crypt. Just wasn't sure if I wanted to hold that up or not. Obviously decided to cast the Kozilek. Alright, so I'll get down a basic wastes here. And then we'll be able to use the surplus mana to untap Grim Monolith in preparation. And swing in with the cicada, knocking our opponent down to 19. And the more damage we deal to them, the more dangerous the mana crypt is going to be. If they do have farewell or some kind of big board wipe, we could counter it by discarding the Zuladok to the Kozilek as well. That does have the counter clause on it. But it's a 4 mana uncounterable Supreme Verdict. And we couldn't have countered that anyway, so yeah, creatures go down here. Got to keep our artifacts at least. I suppose if they're going to blow up artifacts, they'll lose out on 2 mana themselves. Well, there is 1/3 of Tron, the Urza's Mine, and that is going to buff up the Urza's Workshop, which I've been looking forward to playing. So the Workshop now taps for 2 mana. And we'll just completely tap out into the doubling cube again. So that nets us 21 mana and 3 artifact mana. Let's throw out Zuladok first, see if they want to counter that. Apparently not. I'll use the artifact mana to go for Crashing Drawbridge. Because it's not much use in our hand, we need to get Summoning Sickness off the Crashing Drawbridge, ironically. And then we're just replaying our commander again, I think, and we'll finally get something into exile, I hope. Alright, that does land and enters with 11 plus counters on it. So our opponent has 43 cards left in the library. And is teetering at 16 life. But it's another board wipe for our opponent, a Chroma's Vengeance, and that is going to take out everything. So we're going to be on similar amounts of mana here. Our opponent may well be able to pull this off after all. Well, we draw into another land in Urza's Factory. Unfortunately don't have Metalcraft for the Urza's Workshop anymore. But the Urza's Factory will be able to make us artifact creatures at least. Okay, Nevinyrral coming into play for our opponent. Doesn't seem as though there's much of anything else he can do. Does have 4 cards in hand though. Alright, well we're getting lucky with these Urza's lands. That is the second piece of Tron. Oh, and I got too excited to play the Urza land. I should have probably gone for the Field of the Dead there. Anyway, we'll try and slow down our opponent, point this removal at the Nevinyrral. They'll be able to draw a card, but hopefully won't be able to afford to get that out again for a while. We're just treading water until we can get Ulamog down, really. Okay, there's an Erebos, a means of card draw for them, but they do have to be careful with their life total. Okay, and that's something of relevance, a Commander's Plate. Gonna give protection from all colours. Throw out Field of the Dead for a creature token, and then we'll make sure to use the more narrow Mishra's Workshop mana to get down the artifact. Equip the Commander's Plate onto the zombie. And that's going to be hitting for 5. Straight through pretty much anything that our opponent's going to be doing. Unless he can get down a colourless artifact creature. So should put a decent clock on our opponent. Oh wow, but it looks like our opponent's playing Board Wipe Tribal, a Day of Judgment. So if our opponents didn't scoop to the rapidly fast Eldrazi, then they likely would have scooped to Board Wipe Tribal. So I don't feel quite as bad for our really fast start now. Okay, a Mana Vault gets us one step closer to Metalcraft, which we need for the Urza's Saga, or the Urza's Workshop even. So I'll play a land, trigger Field of the Dead again, and then we'll get down the Mana Vault so that we can generate a token with the Urza's Factory. Have to tap out pretty much everything into this, but we'll put the Commander's Plate onto the artifact creature so that we've got a means of protecting that. And we can keep Metalcraft more easily that way. So now the Workshop should be tapping for 4 mana. Alright, blink and you'll miss it. That was a Fumigate. So definitely going for the board wipes consistently. Luckily we have a consistent means of making creatures with lands. So once again we don't have Metalcraft anymore thanks to the creature going down. I think we will untap the Mana Vault here though, because we're not getting down our commander either way. Alright, and there's an Oblivion Sower, which we're not going to be getting down this turn I don't think. Get another zombie out with Field of the Dead. Oblivion Sower could be really good with making a bunch of zombies. That might be our means of going wide. So once again get the zombie plate equipped and await the 5th board wipe or whatever it is. Okay, just passing through the turn is ominous, maybe Cyclonic Rift or something. And there we see Chimil, which is a means of keeping our stuff from being countered, so I think we're best getting that down first because they kind of have to counter that if they have any in hand. Otherwise they've got dead cards. Yep, and there we go, a mana drain. Not the worst thing to mana drain either. It'll gain them 6 mana for their commander. But it does hopefully clear the way for the Oblivion Sower, so we'll see how many lands we can grab here. We've exiled half of our opponent's library, so we'll be able to take a lot of lands from them. Okay, so that resolves. We've got an Ancient Tomb, plenty of basics I'm sure. Sunken Hollow, a Plains, another Jewel. Marsh Flats is a fetch, that won't be too useful to us. Maybe we can get into an Urborg or something so that we can tap those down for mana. And finally a Command Tower as well, so got plenty of lands. And then for the shock lands it's asking us if we want to pay life. Yeah, I'll just pay the life for it. We've got a surplus of life, so hopefully it won't be of any relevance. Can't remember how much Ulamog costs now. And with that we get a cartload of Field of the Dead triggers, so that's a lot of zombies. No haste unfortunately, but we do get the Commander's Plate attack, so 5 damage to our opponent. And some of the lands came in tapped from our opponents, so we are just one shy of casting the Ulamog unfortunately. But we don't need it in play anyway. Our opponent either goes for a board wipe or loses this turn. 6 colourless mana from the mana drain. And there he goes for a sorcery speed route. So once again blowing everything up. Leaving our artifacts intact at least. Unfortunately couldn't hold up the Ezra's factory previously. And now here's where we get into a bit of a bind. Nevinyrral just saw all those creatures die. So when it enters, it comes in with a bunch of zombie tokens. This is where it might be relevant that I needlessly shocked myself a couple of times previously. Alright, a Skyclave Relic. Do we kick that or not? I think we do because it will give us Metalcraft for the rest of the game most likely, because those things are indestructible. And the more we have to recast Ulamog, the more our mana is going to matter. So we get 3 copies of the relic into play. And I'll go for recasting the Ulamog. And we'll make sure to hold up the Ezra's factory as well so that we can make a 2/2 token for chump blocking with maybe. So exiling them down to 15 cards in the library, and we've still got 11 plus counters on Ulamog. I would assume that would be the biggest spell they've got. Equip up the Commander's Plate for only 3 mana, and this way we can still pay for the Ezra's factory like I said. Alright, so 3 cards in hand, 14 in the library and straight through to combat. So do we make a factory worker now? We'd lose 2 life to the Ancient Tomb. And all it would do is trade a zombie. We'd lose 1 to Mana Vault as well. So I think I'll just go through to blocks. We'll block 1 zombie. And Ulamog will hopefully be able to swing through for victory next turn because our opponent doesn't quite have us. Obviously can't block the commander or he'll be able to wipe the board again. And minimising the number of creatures that die here means that Erebos can't quite draw as many cards. Gets to draw 1 though if he wants to go down to 10, and he does. So yeah, thanks to the Commander's Plate being forced to wipe the board again, that is an Hour of Revelation. And with us being at 4 life, we could make the token, but do we want to lose life to the Ancient Tomb? Yeah, I don't think so. Suppose I could have floated the mana from the Mana Vault just in case I changed my mind. Anyway, the Erebos goes on the stack a million times thanks to seeing all those zombies go down, so we'll see how much life he wants to put into this. Alright, does go down to 6, goes down to 4. Alright, and decides to leave it there. So the Urza's factory creatures and the Field of the Dead creatures might be of some relevance here. Although we can't necessarily get through anymore thanks to the Commander's Plate going down. Maybe we just have to mill out our opponent at this point. 10 cards left in the library, let's go straight in for casting our Commander. Still got Metalcraft on the workshop thankfully. So that taps for 4 mana. Exiling half of our opponent's library takes him down to 5, and still coming in with 11 plus counters on it. Not going to play the mana crypt that we just drew into for obvious reasons. But you'll never guess, it is another board wipe in Kaya's Wrath. I'm not sure which is the most boring deck here between the two of us. So probably should have made an assembly worker last turn by floating the mana from the Ancient Tomb. But at 4 life we can survive a hit from the Commander if he gets haste. Anyway, we'll make an assembly worker now without tapping down the Ancient Tomb. Alright, there's an Urza's Cave which can fetch any land out. That might be relevant. What land would we want is the question. Maybe Rogue's Passage, or we could complete Tron. That would allow us to just keep casting our Commander over and over, although I think we're managing to do that anyway. Anyhow, before anything else, we'll just go through to attacks, take our opponent down to 2. And then get down the Urza's Cave, make a Field of the Dead token again, and it's in for our Ulamog for however many times this is. So only 2 cards left in our opponent's library. But passing it over to our opponent, it is a Damnation yet again. But hopefully we'll be able to get through with the assembly worker, because I don't think they can afford their Commander here. Alright, that will take us out next turn though. That is a Deathbringer Regent, a 5/6 flyer. So, in that case, it is make an assembly worker, go fetch a Rogue's Passage with the Urza's Cave. I've made sure to hold up enough mana for both of them. So at the end step, make the assembly worker first of all. And the 2/2 comes into play, then we can crack the Urza's Cave. This will search for any land and put it into play tapped. Oh, actually, that's so annoying. I didn't account for the fact that Command Tower doesn't tap for any mana because it can't make colourless. Oh, that might have cost us the game, that mistake. We definitely can't tap the Marsh Flats for mana either. Yeah, if I played that mana crypt previously, we could have afforded it. That might have just cost the game. Well, we're in top deck mode, see what we get into. Oof. Alright, managed to get into a Meteor Golem, so never punished for that mistake. Just play out the Meteor Golem and point it straight at the demon, then we can swing through for the final 2 points of damage. And our opponent decided to just pay the life into the Erebos instead, so goes down. See what we were drawing into. Yeah, we were getting Ulamog next turn. I mean, it was basically just a means of trying to keep our head above water with regards to life total. But our opponent only had a couple more turns left anyway, thanks to his library being completely exiled. So there we go, what I thought was going to be a very one-sided game ended up being a good 1v1. A nod back to the earlier days of the channel. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed Ulamog the Defiler and are enjoying Modern Horizons content. If there's any other commanders that you'd like to see, then be sure to let me know in the comments section. Big thank you to the patrons as always. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.